What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and on the phone we got Ryan Kirby from Fit for a King. Thank you for your time today, man. Great to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here. It's fair to say you've had a busy couple of years because Dark Skies came out in 2018. You just recently released a split with We Came as Romans. So basically, could that song that you released on the We Came as Romans collaboration maybe serve as a clear representation on the direction Fit for a King may be going in the future?
No, the collab track was actually just an older track that we had. I guess the best way to put it is we each had a song, made instrumentals of them, and then gave them to each vocalist to put our own spin on it. Because this collab came together, well, we had talked about doing the merch together for a while, but the actual song swap ended up happening over the course of 3 days. Where we saw people were really excited about the merch, and we were like, we should really do something else other than the merch. People seem really pumped. And so Dave from Lyrical was like, I really like Backbreaker. It'd be awesome if I could scream on that. And then I was like, cool, well, let me scream on something. And then they carry the weight, and we both tracked vocals, and 3 days later, we had the songs finished and then uploaded them to Spotify. So basically the whole process was like a week. So it wasn't a very long, planned out thing.
It was just like a very organic sort of fell into place scenario.
Yeah, we just wanted to we were like, you know what, everybody's stuck inside and bands aren't touring. We should do something more than just a shirt, because a lot of bands are doing that. And the collab idea was Weekar's idea in the first place, which it was really cool for them to approach us. We're friends with David, their drummer, and have hung out with the other guys, but never had actually toured with them. So I think that was another motivator to actually do something with each other's bands now that touring isn't really an option.
I get you. Yeah, definitely makes sense. But now that Dark Skies is, going to be hitting the 2-year-old mark in the fall, I'm probably asking this way in advance, and normally I would say this towards the end of the interview, but can we, is Fit for a King working on anything new at the moment? We'd be expecting some stuff, if you're allowed to say, of course.
Yeah, we finished tracking our album back in February, so fortunately we hit the studio before the pandemic hit and got everything finished. The last piece is to shoot some music videos, and the album should be rolling out in the late summer, early fall, but just have to get these music videos done, which will be the trickier part. I think we're going to shoot them in Georgia, because it's the place with the least restrictions on studios.
Yeah, best. That's probably the only place you can do it at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, Georgia's going to become the new Los Angeles.
I know. It already kind of was doing well with film, and now it's just like a no-brainer. LA is kind of out of commission right now for anything entertainment-wise.
Yeah. But with the new album, are you planning on making a direct continuation from what we heard on Dark Skies, or is this going to be almost like a new start for Fit for a King?
I would say it's a mix, where let's say half the record is a continuation of Dark Skies. I would say a better version of Dark Skies. It's more refined. And then the other half is kind of the next chapter. It's a more metal sound than we've ever had before.
Mm-hmm. Well, as a fan of Fit for a King, this could just me be, being a fan who's followed you guys forever, but if you played me 30 seconds of a song, I could tell that that's off of Dark Skies, that's off of Death Grip, that's off of Slave to Nothing, and so on and so forth. So is it fair to say you like to take a new approach to every album and maybe experiment with your sound a little bit?
Definitely, and I think we try to do our best to maintain a Fit for a King sound, but not do the same album over and over again. So it's nice to hear that you can tell the difference relatively quickly between the records, because we want you to know you're listening to Fit for a King right when it comes on, and we want you to know exactly what album it is. We don't want there to be confusion and for them to blend together, because I think once albums start to blend is when things start getting stagnant.
Absolutely. I mean, I I've heard that. I've heard some bands even take this as a compliment sometimes, but you don't want. I think it's fair to say you guys fear that a Fit for a King album. You don't want a Fit for a King album to sound too much like a Fit for a King album. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think if you're a certain size, like I think there's bands that, like ABR, found a sound, got huge off of it, and they still refine it. I know some people like to say, oh, they've been writing the same record, and it's like, I don't know if you've been listening to the ABR records. There's a fiddle on one of them.
Yeah. Like ABR is a band that like has their own sound, but has a lot of boundaries they could break with it. I feel like you guys have a similar element.
Yeah, and we looked at bands like even Architects. I think they're very easy to tell apart on their record. Like Holy Hell sounds nothing like Hollow Crown.
Mm-hmm. Of course. You know, like a lot of people have categorized you, and I don't know how you feel about this label, and if you hang up, I'll totally understand. But like, you know, a lot of people would probably categorize you in the more metalcore sound. But like, I still to this day don't know what metalcore means. Like, I ask people metalcore, they'd be like, oh, it's music that has singing and screaming. I'm like, okay, so you're gonna call Opeth metalcore? Like,
yeah. I view metalcore. I don't get insulted by metalcore because I associate metalcore. I know some people associate it with like old Asking Alexandria, or you know some of those like cringy scene core bands. But at the same time, metalcore is As I Lay Dying, Parkway Drive, Kill Switch Engage, and so it doesn't bother me too much to be called metalcore. I guess what makes up metalcore is just a fusion of metal and hardcore, and I think bands like As I Lay Dying are a perfect representation of that fusion.
absolutely. And I never understood even the difference between hardcore and metal for a long time, since they both are like very aggressive, in-your-face forms of music.
Exactly. And I like even old things like when you like how I mentioned those super scene core things. I don't even know if that's necessarily metalcore. But I mean, I guess breakdowns that it did have root in hardcore music, so
Yeah.
I guess you can't really argue. And then screaming had root in metal and also hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
Probably more on the screaming because hardcore kind of was yelling for the most part, like aggressive yelling.
Yeah, of course.
So I guess I can see how the metalcore is such a broad genre because of that.
Yeah.
Because even though you might hear some old scene music and be like, how on earth could you say this has hardcore influence? I'm like, it's influence maybe not directly from hardcore, but they're playing breakdown.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the ultimate formula. Breakdowns, and more breakdowns. Both sonically and lyrically.
And emotionally.
Of course. As a vocalist, have you always needed to hear music to come up with lyrics, or has there ever been a time where maybe you have like lyrics or maybe a concept or a story in mind, and that could help determine the direction of the music itself?
I would say 95% of the time I write the lyrics after hearing the music. And the lyrics are pretty, if it's before the music's written, it's usually like a breakdown build-up with a one-liner. It's nothing crazy because I don't play any instruments. I'll hear something in my head, like with a breakdown or a riff, and have to like mouth it to Bob or Daniel and hope that they can decipher what I'm saying. But yeah, I usually like hearing the instrument and then writing to the tone that they're, because you know every song has a vibe to it. It can sound sad, it can sound triumphant, it can sound angry, and a lot of times I'll tell Bob, like, hey, let's write a really heavy, angry song, because I think I have a good concept for this, but I won't necessarily have lyrics, but I'll have an idea of what I want to start writing about.
Yeah, I've noticed that on Dark Skies there was like on Dark Skies alone there was like many different like vibes or emotions. Like I thought Engraved was very different from a song like Shattered Glass or Youth Division or Anthem of the Defeated. So like it's fair to say like a lot of the songs are maybe representative of who you or the rest of the band were feeling at a particular time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Do you like to leave lyrics open to interpretation, or do you try to maybe engage the listener into what the lyrics can be about?
So I'm not the biggest fan of like openly explaining what each song's about, simply because I've had fans come up talk about how a song changes their life because they took the lyrics of the song completely differently than I wrote. I guess the meaning they took was completely different from the meaning I was giving the song, but it really helped them with the in the way they. Wow, I'm wording this. The way they took the song in helped them a lot, and I wouldn't want them to feel dumb for feeling the song was about that subject, especially if it like helped them a lot. Now, if somebody just wants to straight up ask me what's the song about, I have no issue telling them.
Yeah, you want to be able to like back up like what you're talking about. It's not like you want you like if like
Yeah.
like it's not like because sometimes I've had a discussion with a couple of artists about this. They say sometimes saying that it's completely open to interpretation and it's almost sometimes like a cop out of just not explaining the songs.
Exactly, and I really want people to be able to take what they want from the song and not feel like, oh, I'm dumb, I didn't realize it was about that, and then almost feel bad for enjoying the song and the way they interpreted it.
Yeah, of course, and when it comes to like the entire Fit for a King catalog, like when you look at Slave to Nothing and Death Grip and Dark Skies, is it almost kind of like representative of who you are at that particular time? Do you almost kind of look at the albums as like a self-portrait in a way?
Yeah, there's definitely different phases of life. Like Descendants, I was dirt poor living in Oklahoma, not because my family was poor, but because I decided to move away from my family to pursue music, and we were an unsigned band out of Texas. We did some regional tours, and I think that when I hear that album, I like see that part of my life. And then Creation Destruction is like our first album signed. I can like see that studio experience in my head. Slave to Nothing is when Tuck joined the band a month before the studio, and there was a lot of uncertainty about what direction we needed to go in. It's just with each record, I remember that section of my life. I can remember the studio experiences vividly. So it is kind of like, little screenshots of my life.
And that's really interesting when you perform those songs live, like, especially like, if you're like on the recent tours that you were doing, like if you perform something off of Death Grip or Creation Destruction, does it almost kind of feel like a time warp in a way?
It does, and sometimes it can affect the performance. I think Vincent from Acacia Strain put it a good way when they were doing their 10-year tour for Continent. He was like, I'm not even angry anymore, and these lyrics are all really angry. I'm sorry, I don't mean these.
Yeah, I interviewed him on that tour, and he brought that up off the record.
So that obviously I wasn't as angry as Vincent was at my angriest or as bad, but there are old songs on Creation Destruction I'll be screaming them and being like, ooh, that lyric's kind of cringy.
Yeah, of course.
But it's funny because it's like my 21-year-old self wrote that, or my 20-year-old or 19-year-old self wrote it, and now I'm 29.
I gotta ask, and I don't mean this in a negative connotation anyway, but do you sometimes have to like look at your earlier work and be like, oh man, what was I thinking sometimes?
Sometimes, yeah. But it's, on the flip side of that, there's certain lines like I would never write now. Like the Your Existence Disgusts Me line off Creation Destruction. I'm like, ew. That's kind of cringy. But at the same time, it was a very popular line. Fans really like it, and maybe just that being younger and not caring is part of what helps make successful music, because you're just not scared to go places because you're worried about it being like cringy or anything, or being weird. You just go for it, and then people like it. Because I think that's why we watch YouTube. YouTubers and world are like, oh my gosh, how could anybody watch this?
And I mean,
like, I could never act like that on camera, but that's why they're successful, is because they do act like that on camera.
Maybe. So I'm guessing from what you're telling me right now, I mean, obviously, touring is out of the question at the moment, but were you ever considering, since Descendants was going to be 10 years old next year, if maybe doing like an anniversary tour of that or something?
No, it's just not popular enough.
Oh.
All the songs are like the very bottom of our Spotify plays.
You have some dedicated fans, though. I'm pretty sure we would love to hear some deep cuts.
I think maybe we'll throw in a song or two on a tour
Yeah.
at the most. But we tried, like, even on, which tour was it? We played a deep cut off Slave to Nothing on a headliner with Norma Jean, sore subject at the moment with everything going on. But it just did not do well. We played A Greater Sense of Self, which was a single off Slave to Nothing, so not even really a deep cut, and maybe it was by far the worst crowd reaction. People had really no idea what the song was. We ended up cutting it from the set.
Aww.
And I think it's just most of our fan base now has come in through Death Grip and especially Dark Skies.
Yeah.
And hasn't really gone back to listen to much of the music.
I think it also depends, because you guys have played with like a variety of different bands too. I'd imagine that you maybe have to like adjust the set list depending on the tours you're on, right? Like, even though this is kind of maybe not the best analogy, but like, you know, playing with a band like Devil Wears Prada or Ice Nine Kills, I think has a similar audience, but then playing with a band like As They Lay Dying, and like, that's where you have to maybe like adjust it a little bit, right?
Yeah, and that's why when we went out with Norma Jean, we were like, let's play like an older song, because there's going to be older bands that didn't go over. So I was like, all right, maybe that just wasn't what people were looking for. Definitely Dying, we made sure to play like the more masculine tracks that we have, like the heavier stuff, the more metal stuff, because we talked to our friends in Era that said it was a little rough for them with As They Lay Dying, but I think it's the pitch that Jesse sings at maybe isn't to the style As They Lay Dying fans are looking for, because they're all like macho dudes.
When it comes to playing live, actually, you kind of led me into the next question, because I, as somebody who's seen you live now countless times, it's always a different experience than simply listening to the album. For you, though, is there maybe a similar creative energy into your live presence as there is when you're songwriting, or is playing live in the studio almost two separate mind frames altogether?
They're definitely separate mindsets. Live, I just focus a lot less on the technicality of my vocals and just try to stay aggressive, keep up the adrenaline, and also not sound bad. And then in the studio, I'm just overanalyzing all my vocals because I know I can take multiple takes. I'm making sure enunciation is absolutely perfect. And it's also different because in the studio, you're like writing a lot of times. And even if you wrote the stuff ahead of time, you're performing it for the first time to the song. Because the way we like to write is a lot of it happens in the studio. So, yeah, my mindset's definitely different in the studio than on stage. Because on stage, I'm not really creating. I'm just there to entertain and to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd imagine that, so it's fair to say when you go into songwriting mode, there's almost kind of not like a preconceived idea that you revolve everything around, right?
Yeah.
You ready for the most difficult question of the whole interview?
I'm ready.
How do you know when a song is done?
I think, man, that is a hard one. I think it's kind of a gut feeling. Like when we did Breaking the Mirror, it was actually the very first song we wrote in the studio with Drew, and it was actually completely done day one, vocals, instruments, everything. And we were just like, that's a single. That's great. Because our goal was to write a new Price of Agony song, and that was it. And I think there's moments, and then there's songs that we did like 15 revisions on. So I guess it's once everyone in the band has nothing to criticize except minor things, like that fill could be different, or is that the best word we could use? And then we're like, well, can we think of another one? And everyone's like, no, not really. And it's like, okay, well, we'll go back to that if you do think of a better word. So it's kind of like you just keep doing revisions until the criticisms are so minor that you're like, this is kind of a waste of our studio time.
Fair enough. You ever worried that like the original way you wrote something will be a B-side one day and it'll just be the biggest hit you guys ever had?
I guess it's unfortunate and fortunate for us. We don't have like crazy amounts of extra songs. Like we all live in separate areas. Like I told you, Tuck lives in Brooklyn. Daniel, our other guitarist, lives in Los Angeles. Me and Jared and Bob live in Fort Worth. So we don't get together to write very much unless it's on tour, but we're usually not doing that on tour too much. So once we hit the studio, Bob and Dan usually write parts or riffs. And then we choose to build around that riff or start from scratch. But since we don't meet up to write very much, usually when we hit the studio, the writing just like explodes and we're just writing like crazy because so much creative energy has been built up. So I think we never end up with tons of B-sides. I don't even think we have a single B-side from this album. We have one from Dark Skies, and I don't think we had any for Death Grip. So we're definitely not one of those bands that writes 50, 60 songs
and then has to
bring them to the studio.
Okay. That's a relief to hear because like there's so many bands that I know who like they say, oh yeah, we wrote like 70 songs for this. I'm like, you pretty much have like 10. There's so many bands that are able to get like 5 albums done over the course of releasing one.
Yeah, and I think Bob maybe writes more songs, but he told me he doesn't even bother sending me stuff because he doesn't want me to start writing lyrics until he knows it's a song that he is very into. And like on this album, everything was written in the studio on not on Dark Skies. Only 2 songs were written ahead of time. It was Backbreaker, which was only the first minute and a half of the song was written vocally and instrumentally at the very beginning of Tower of Pain.
Oh, wow. Damn. It seems like you guys are always very certain, and I give you a lot of credit for that because uncertainty is usually the greatest enemy for any form of art.
And that we just really, at this point, we used to write way more songs, but I think our band is so focused in now, especially with this new record, which is why I'm so excited to put it out. We're just laser focused on what we want from our band and what we want our band to sound like. So we know as soon as Bob or Daniel starts writing something, we know if that's going to make it or not. And we just nip it in the bud right there if it's not going to be good enough.
There almost has to be kind of like a pinnacle, like emotional attachment to it in a way to where it makes the album, right?
Exactly. Like we'll hear a riff, and if we're not all just like pumped on it, we're just like throw it out or toss it to the side. Maybe it'll be needed again when there's writer's block, but we're just not feeling it right now.
Mm-hmm. I totally get you. And the final question I wanted to ask you is that you have a very, very dedicated fan base. You know, like just the last couple of years, you know, I saw you on the Devil Wears Prada tour, the anniversary tour that they did, and I also saw you on the Ice Nine Kills Light the Torch show that you guys were on. And, you know, my job as a journalist at every show is to kind of be a buzzkill and interrupt people's discussions and ask them, you know, what does this band mean to you? You know, how did you discover this band? And I've heard some stories on how, you know, your band has helped them through very difficult times and stuff. When you hear on how somebody resonates with your art and, you know, connects with you, does it almost change on how you look at yourself as an artist in a way?
Definitely has. Like whenever we put out Creation Destruction, I always bring those up because it was so early in my life looking back, because Descendants, I was 19 or 20. Creation Destruction, I believe I was 21 or 22. I did not take my role seriously I just kind of looked at it still like I'm in a local band, but now we're touring inside. And I was just kind of not really caring that we had a growing fan base. I was, you know, just not a great person. Like, I won't get into details on that. It's in my devotional that I wasn't the most faithful person to who I was dating and all that. And, but as the band grows and whether I like it or not or want to admit it or not, people start looking up to me. It really changed how I started living my life, because I lived my life like, wow, I do not need to be a bad influence for people. I need to push myself to be a better person. It's the reason that I changed how I viewed relationships and treated them. It's the reason that I decided to lose weight last year. It's because I wanted to be a good influence for people. Like, I'm super unhealthy and I'm putting on weight as I get older. It's like, I need to change that because there's people that look up to me, and if I make positive changes, they'll make positive changes. Whether I want to agree agree with them that I'm somebody to look up to or not. It's going to happen. So I need to take that seriously.
Yeah, it's almost like an artist has a responsibility at that point, right?
Exactly, and I think and why you see a lot of cancellations and stuff in the scene is a lot of people don't take that seriously because, I think most people say and do stupid things when they're teenagers or even in their early 20s, but a lot of people don't grow out of that because they don't realize, like, how significant their role is even when their band is huge.
Yeah. Artists are, like, I don't think people realize that artists are ultimately, like, what drives society forward and opens people's minds up. So you have kind of, like, a responsibility, and sometimes it could be a burden, but, like, in the end, like, this is, your passion and your art is what's making an impact on people's lives. You can't take it for granted.
And it's definitely, like, annoying at times because I'll have an opinion on something, and that no matter what that opinion is, there's always somebody that's mad that you have that opinion and says you shouldn't be saying that. You have people, like, the other day when I just said, like, Jesus Christ, is it that hard not to use a racial slur? People were mad that I said Jesus Christ because that's saying the Lord's name in vain. That was what they took out of the tweet.
Yeah.
A tweet that I was like, there's no way anybody's gonna be mad that I said this. I was like, oh, cool, people are mad that I said that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of stuff like that where if I wasn't on the radar, like, in the scene and, like, noticed by people, they just wouldn't care. So stuff like that's a little annoying, but I would never trade my position for another one.
Yeah, and it sounds like, what some fans may not realize is your music may have helped them better themselves, but it seems like that your fans also helped you better yourself.
Exactly, and there's times I've had in the past stupid opinions and fans have called me out and I reevaluate myself because of it. So I am thankful for fans that have shown me how to view things in a different way and grow as a person.
That's awesome. That's really great. And I'm sure a lot of fans are really going to be super appreciative over that.
Well, I appreciate them. I appreciate the ones that are calling me out for saying Jesus Christ too. Maybe I shouldn't say it, even though I just said it on here.
Who knows? You can't please. Also, though, as an artist, you achieve the ultimate artistic freedom and peace when you maybe realize that you can't control how other people react to what you say or do.
Yeah, that's why when now at the point where people are, like, saying I'm going to unfollow you over something stupid, I'm like, all right, bye.
Yeah. There's a fine line.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It was great to be able to chat with you. Obviously thanks to a certain virus that shall not be named, obviously touring is out of the question right now. And I know that, the tour that you were doing before with Chelsea Grin, obviously, is there just any way fans could support you guys in terms of where they could find your merch and anything like that? And anything else you would like to promote for Fit for a King?
FFAKmerch.com is the best place to find merch. And honestly, that's about it right now. We're going to go shoot some music videos hopefully in the next month and have some new music rolling out in a little less than a month.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. Everybody, Ryan Kirby of Fit for a King. New stuff coming very soon. Be sure to check out their merch and support if you can, and we will see you next time on Heavy New York.